Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adam Overanalyzes. Oh man, episode 8. The season finale. The writers, the directors, the cast, they outdid themselves. I will do my best to not squeal like the little fangirl I am during the course of this recording, but I offer no promises. Oh, sweet AT-ATs on Hoth, this was a perfect episode. It was just wonderful. Expectation after expectation is set up and shattered, tossed into the boiling lava. Because you know what? This show is going almost exactly where you expect it is, but all the points are going to be subverted. But then, maybe it's not going where you expect it. Maybe these subversions are going to be subverted again. I was on the edge of my seat in every scene and even from scene to scene. It was wonderful. These writers are geniuses, and they gave it to a directing genius. Whew, all right. Goal is no squealing. We'll see how that goes. First, the plot twist. Remember how I described the show's plot as a bottle-opening corkscrew? How the plot twists surprisingly every few moments, but always is headed in the same general direction. It gets back on track a few minutes later to exactly where you know this episode, the heist episode, the romance episode, the Seven Samurai episode is going. Well, this episode did that, but by 5 minutes into the movie, it was clear you didn't know where this episode was going. You didn't know which episode this was. We all thought Moff Gideon was going to get Baby Yoda. More on that later. But aside from not knowing where the plot was going, I don't know what to call it. It is after all the corkscrew plot twists. It is after the main plot twist, but this plot twist... Sorry. Okay, there's going to be a ton of spoilers from here on out. I'm not going to spoil the main plot twist. You'll have to watch the show for that. I'm trying. I'm a professional. Okay. Everyone in this show is so human. I can't tell you how much that means to me. Science fiction, the best science fiction, Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate. It all has one theme. Everybody reacts like a normal human. You take the star and you put them in this situation, and they react to that situation the way the best person you know, the closest person you know to a hero would react. All right, doubling back just a little bit, my first excited moment was when I clicked on the screen and saw that this episode was 47 minutes. This episode did not feel like 47 minutes. It was over way too soon, but I was so excited when I saw that because I knew it was going to be good. All right, the first corkscrew plot twists. Who are these clowns, these two stormtroopers? Am I supposed to be getting attached to them? I don't know. He hurt Baby Yoda. He deliberately hurt Baby Yoda. I mean, I assume by the show's logic that means he dies horribly. And yet, the show puts so much time into making you connect to these two jerks. And they're going back and forth like a Laurel and Hardy skit. And I honestly don't know if we're going to see them again. Because this show, it kind of gets you attached to them for all that they are, kind of horrible people. But, they're the kind of horrible people that you love to hate. And the jokes, I wonder if he really did shoot an officer who was trying to disturb him. But anyway, and then IG-11 shows up. We were kind of expecting this, so I'm not going to call it a plot twist. But then the plot does that little corkscrew thing. Out of everyone who has done horrible things in this show, right in front of the innocent little baby without thinking twice about it, IG-11 is the one who apologizes. IG-11 is the one who doesn't overtly kill the people who'd done wrong. According to the logic of this show, these two stormtroopers, they'd done wrong. They'd hurt Baby Yoda. They'd mocked the Mando. They deserved to die. But we don't see that. The one who, it's very karmatic, the one who hit Baby Yoda on the head gets his wrist broken, and the other one who hit him on the head gets his head knocked in, but neither of those wounds looked fatal. So here's the corkscrew. The murder droid is the one showing the most, let's call it, the punishment should be equal to the crime, the sort of a Blackstone level moral legal action. IG-11 is fitting their punishment to their crime. They didn't kill the baby, so they're not going to die. They didn't risk the baby's life, so they're not going to die. They're just going to hurt. Okay, anyway, so then comes the bigger corkscrew plot twist. Literal corkscrew. IG-11 turns around and heads back into town instead of heading for the hardened ship where they can escape. That was very surprising. Alright, now, getting back to the town where everything's going down with Mando and Cara and Greef Karga. Here is a point, not necessarily plot twist, but Moff Gideon loves the sound of his own voice. He is a villain who wants to monologue. And I am going to tell you, in this case, I'm actually pretty down with it. Moff Gideon has a wonderful voice. This man is charisma personified. I love to hate him. I could have listened to him monologue for quite a while longer. Usually that thing's kind of a burden to listen to, especially in a cheaply done episode. But man, I wanted to hear more of Moff Gideon going on about what he wanted. And you know, everybody's in trouble because they used their full names. And Moff Gideon apparently knows everything, which is explained a little later, but more on that. So, there's a couple of little backstory world-building elements. Number one, how is Moff Gideon alive? He was supposed to have been executed for war crimes. Is he a clone? Did he have a clone executed in his place while he ran off to the Outer Rim? All right, and what exactly is this terrifying propaganda myth that Cara is so afraid of? Ooh, is that going to come back into the show? I mean, Greef Karga seems to be pretty sure it's just a propaganda bit, and it sounds like he might be in a position to know who was Greef Karga. So, was Karga an imp before the fall of the Empire? It does certainly explain his political style of talking, and him not being very good at dealing with actual people in a situation where he has no power except that which he can convince them to give him, because if he did come from a low-grade imperial point of power, he would have been just a mid-level functionary. He still had the Empire backing him up, so he didn't have to be convincing, but now he has to be convincing, and he's not very good at it. That makes sense. Alright, here comes the third major corkscrew plot twist. The sewer escape didn't work immediately. Classically, in this kind of adventure setting, as soon as somebody thinks to go into the sewers, there's a easily liftable manhole cover right there. But they have to tear apart the room just to find the cover, and they can't get it off without help. And I love the backstory this gives us on Mando. Now that the sewer attempt has failed, you get a little more talk. The scene where he was rescued was just perfect, and it explains how well this show subverts expectations. He starts to talk about Moff Gideon, and there's a real emotion in your voice, and you just can't identify the emotion. And then you see the scene where the Mandalorian rescues him. And I tell you, for a solid 3 seconds, I thought they were setting up the kind of heart-wrenching plot twist where Moff Gideon used to be a Mandalorian who dishonored himself and took off his helmet, and he was the one who rescued Mando, and Mando was going to have to face down the man who rescued and raised him. And for like 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, wow, and plot twist, nope. Moff Gideon was just an Imperial ISB agent who was on Mandalore when all the bad stuff went down. And man, does Moff Gideon love to talk. He's still talking. And this explains why Cara was so terrified of the great big gun that they bring up. I mean, she was a drop troop. That means she was dropped into the maw of these horrible, monstrous death traps. And now it's mobile and coming for her when she's trapped in this shot-up saloon. I mean, that is something. It's a very, very human moment. Her terror is so perfectly. And she's just like a strong warrior woman panicking, and Gina Carano portrays that so well. Meanwhile, the comedy is just mixed in so perfectly with all these deep, terrifying emotions. In that scene where Karga takes that last gulp of it felt so real, so natural. Like, yeah, if I was in Karga's place, I would have done that too. I couldn't help laughing. And that was a very, very human moment. And then the show reaches out. It doesn't break the fourth wall. It passes through the fourth wall and pulls you in with this very, very human moment. They have to blast their way out of the saloon. And they get out there, and Mando picks up the giant gun and starts wielding this basically cannon with nothing but his muscle and his armor. And the audience is like, oh yeah, pick that sucker up and blast out of here just like you did back on that first episode. And then the camera pans over to Kara, who's covering him, and her face just lights up with that exact oh yeah moment. Go for it. I mean, that smile on her face was just all of us. And then came that odd element, why is the camera focusing on a bomb planted on some random door? And then it explodes in on Kara. Everything starts to go downhill. The Mando gets blasted. IG swoops in and gets them all back into the relative safety of the saloon. And this is where things start to go weird. I mean, just where you start to question what's going on. Because Moff Gideon said, you have something I cherish more than you will know. And everybody automatically assumed that's Baby Yoda. But, knowing full well that they have Baby Yoda in there with them, a small, tiny creature, which is very, very flammable. In case you didn't know, organic matter burns very easy. He sends in the fireman. In classic Fahrenheit, what is it, Fahrenheit 451? I can't remember the exact time. Sends in the fireman with the torch, a very valid military maneuver given the situation. If you want to know where that scene came from, World War II and the pillbox bunkers the Japanese forces put on the Pacific Islands when the U.S. forces were island hopping. That was a very kind of viscerally real military moment there. But anyway, why did Moff Gideon send a flamethrower guy in when he knew that there was a very flammable Baby Yoda in there with them? You can't get much DNA off of a brick of charcoal. Anyway, moving on. So, IG-11 is there, and now the sewer thing comes back into play, because IG-11 can weld out and then rip open the sewer plot. And this is when the plot twists really, really start corking around. So, this does bring up another question, though. Why has Mando not been called Din since he was a child? What did the other members of his covert call him then? I mean, is the covert situation just this, hey you, just work fine, or are you without much Beskar in your armor? What did they call him? Was he Fighter Mandalorian number 5 or something? Anyway, I'm just curious how the covert naming systems work, because if he hasn't heard that name since he was a kid, what do they call him? Clearly not Mando. Anyway, Mando is badly injured, and Kara tries to help him, tries to take off his helmet. We all held our breath, but nope, he refuses. These aren't really plot twists, but interesting and very well portrayed. But then, for the next corkscrew is when IG-11 stays, hands off the baby to Cara Dune, sends them down into the sewers to stay safe, and IG-11 makes a point of staying with Mando. Cara tells him to bring Mando along. IG-11 agrees. And then there's another plot twist. The corkscrew goes a little wider than it has before, when Mando declares that he would rather have IG-11 kill him than some imp. This droid has just gone up from something he would hated and would kill in an instant to something he values more than an Imperial as a warrior of honor. So, okay, one hunter-killer warrior talking to another, that kind of makes sense. Then IG-11 offers medical aid. Now, alright, let's go off on a side note here. In-universe Bacta isn't cheap. It's really good stuff. It was fairly cheap before the war, but the war decimated the Bacta population, as it were. And this isn't just IG-11 offering to help Mando. This isn't just Mando having to accept help from another enemy. This is Kuiil reaching out from the dead and offering aid to Mando and Baby Yoda. This is Grandpa taking care of his grandkids even after he's passed. Kuiil had to spend his money to buy that Bacta to refill IG's tanks. I doubt there was any left after IG had been blasted to pieces. Or I doubt he was carrying any when he was sent to kill Baby Yoda. And in a situation like Kuiil's primitive farm, money is quite literally time and effort. He would have had to trade for that bacta. He would have had to spend hours, days, weeks even, working to earn enough to buy that bacta. How long did he work? Did he sweat to make sure that IG had what he needed to help Baby Yoda, to help Mando? Kuiil, excuse me, is that grandfather who's caring for you and protecting you long after he's gone. I love that character. It's just one of those brilliantly written moments in the show that takes me back to a very real place. Soon after my own grandfather had passed away, I found a letter he had written years before, tucked in between some books. It was in that precise handwriting that sailors learn in the Navy, because you see, my grandpa was one of those Navy men hopping from island to island back in the 1940s. He was one of those men who would have seen the flamethrowers go up on the beaches, get shot to pieces, and take out those pillboxes. That handwriting that he learned, that they all learned, is meant to be read and understood at a glance. It's broad, even strokes with letters that were with a script, a font that was designed to just go straight into your brain. And when that letter fell out of those books, I glanced down at it and instantly read, "I love you." I then spent the next half hour sobbing on the floor. And it is amazing how much of that feeling of a loved one watching out for you from beyond the grave that the writers managed to capture in this show. In fact, I would call this a running plot. Get below the city, Mando says. Get into the sewers. My covert will protect us, Mando says. Then IG-11 rips off the grate, gets them down to the sewers. They're limping along, and yes, the covert does protect them. Then comes the first huge plot twist of the show, the one that takes the neat corkscrew and twists it hard sideways. This is a true plot twist. This is the show taking you somewhere you didn't expect to go. And it's while the Mando and IG-11 are still up there arguing over whether or not Mando's going to get any medical attention. The Mando reveals that he considers IG-11 not just a warrior, but a living being. For as much as he hates droids, Mando is willing to grant the honor, respect, and civility due to a proper sentient, sapient being to this droid that he hated. And for the sake of Mando, for the sake of Baby Yoda, IG-11 gently, lovingly refuses this honor. IG humbles himself so that he can provide service to this man who hates him. IG-11 willingly makes himself the least of these to save the ungrateful. That, there, packed into that one little moment in a sci-fi spaghetti western, is 4,000 years of symbolism and meaning. In that moment, IG-11, the hated droid, IG-11, the useful tool, he died and was born again. Mando, the droid hater, the child scarred, he died. Perhaps not all the way. The evil, the hateful parts of us weak organic creatures do not die so easily or so quickly, but they do die if we are willing to let them die. And Din Djarin, the friend, was reborn in his place. I should note that all through this episode, I was just glorying in how much emotion Pedro Pascal was putting into his voice, how great a voice actor he was. Every time he spoke, I thrilled at how much was there. I was waiting, listening for each word he said. That and IG-11 will be important later. I will not squeak, I will not... Pedro! Okay, sorry, out of my systems now. Alright. And then when IG-11 says that was meant to be a joke to put you at ease, I honestly thought that at this moment that I could never feel closer to a droid. I have tried to put people at ease with jokes in tense situations, and have had just about as much success as IG-11. This also means that Grandpa Kuiil taught IG-11 dad jokes, so good on him. But the voice, all of Pedro's following lines are filled with pain. I mean, it was to the point where it was too good. It was hurting me to listen to them, and I had to wonder, how deep does Pedro's method acting go? Did he have Gina break his wrist or something? Give him a good solid MMA kick to his unarmored regions? That is how good the pain in his voice was. And again, back to how human everyone is. The Mando, for all that he is a man of nearly half a century of life in the show, he is so emotionally fragile. It It's as if his heart is still a growing teenager. When faced with the remains of his covert, you hear him break. You hear it in his voice. He has nothing left to do, so he irrationally lashes out at the only one he can, the only authority figure he can find. And Karga. Grief Karga mans up. Suddenly he's not the stumbling, stuttering politician. I mean, he's still obviously nervous around Mando, scared of the obvious power that Mando holds, but you can still tell he kind of considers Mando one of his. That he has a role of authority over Mando, and he has to live up to that. Mando's one of his bounty hunters, and he is the boss, so he has to be strong for Mando. And just when the kid's about to slug Dad in his face, in his fury, Mom steps in and ends that nonsense with a word. And that dynamic is just perfect. Alone, Mando has to be the dad. He has to make all the decisions. But his character changes so much and shows so many different sides when you put him with these other characters. And that is how you write an excellent secondary character. Grief Karga was something of an authority figure, someone for him to rebel against. But this woman is the literal den mother to the Mandalorians. He respects her in the same way that Brits respect the Queen Mother. He never says so. He never has to say so. When he talks to her, it's in his voice, in his stance. Let's go back again to the 1940s and our uncles who went overseas. One of my uncles who ended up in the European theater worked with a lot of Brits, and he came back with a lot of different stories, but the one that kind of got told the most was he was chatting with one of his fellow soldiers, who happened to be a Brit, about the royal family, and he told us about the moment this Brit mentioned the Queen Mother, the mother of the current Queen Elizabeth II, who passed on. He said that the man spoke of her with awe and reverence, the Queen Mum. And this wasn't a noble, this wasn't a rich guy, this was just some guy from the middle of London, lower class. But when he spoke of her, he spoke with that she was the Queen Mum. And this is the same way that Mando speaks to and about the armorer. She is the matriarch. And a little bit of this runs through every system ruled by a respected female. This is almost how my father and my uncles treated both of my grandmothers. It was a flashback to the first time I remember my father interacting with my grandmother. It was love, respect, a little fear. These writers, these directors, they touch on the humanity so good. The human so good. And Pedro, man, that man can act through a Plasticrete wall, let alone a Beskar mask. I don't know what to say about the rest of this scene. It is just so perfect. I think I'm going to dedicate an entire episode just to the armor and what she is doing in this scene. I don't know if I can do it justice, but I'll try. On a less serious note, I think we were all thinking that watching Mando train with his jetpack is going to be hilarious. Whack into this, smack into that. Baby Yoda is going to have a blast watching him. Bang, whack, bump. I can already hear Mando grumbling about Baby Yoda laughing at him. Then comes the river Styx. Here we get back to pure symbolism. These designers are genius. This is the quality of scene creations that would do honor to every theater that has existed since Athens. This is the river Styx. And it doesn't smack you in the face with it. This isn't a sudden change. This is a natural progression from the dirty, grimy town above to the sewers. Then you are in the underworld. You are gently and gradually immersed into the underworld so naturally that you don't notice the transition from a shoot 'em up, bang 'em up to ancient concepts. There is the ferryman. There is the ferry that will call you across the river Styx. Get out your coin because it's time to pay the toll. There is so much in this scene. I think I'm going to do a video on the symbolism of it alone for later. But for now, I'm just going to focus on the beautifully written problem solving. They got a problem. How do they get through the river of lava? Okay, so there's the ferry. It's stuck. One guy pushes it, doesn't work. Get friends to help, doesn't work. Two pushing doesn't work. Use a lever. The lever doesn't work. Time to use advanced techs, i.e. the gun with explosions, and boom, the ferry's freed. That is the beautiful three-part act right there. It is perfectly structured, both in itself and in the greater show as a whole. It was perfectly acted. Each character was assigned to the role that fits them best, as dictated by how their brains and personalities have been portrayed in the series so far. Grief Karga, the magistrates, the bounty hunter leader, he wanted to solve the problem by working together. Mando, the independent, he wanted to reduce the amount of work by using a tool and doing it on his own. Kara, the soldier who was trained to depend on her tech and use the most advanced tools she had available at her disposal, she blasts it. And then moving down the river, lava otters! Look, I cannot tell you how wonderful that scene was to me as an ecologist, and it tells you how deep these riders go in every direction. Of course, there would be lava otters on a lava river, and they moved, they acted just like real-life river otters. I have seen animals act like that on real waterways in the real world from a real boat. Again, I'm a scientist, so I might be a little weird even by Star Wars fan standards, but they weren't even creepy. I wanted one to jump on the boat so that Baby Yoda could have a pet. I want a lava otter plushie. Your opinion might be different, the red eyes and the darkness and the bouncy weaseliness, but oh man, you putting a level 2 predator right here is amazing world building. This certainly means that there are lava fish and a whole lava-based ecosystem, and I'm sorry, I digress. Back to the story, plot twist, but lava otters, I want to boop its nose. Okay, another of the show's beloved corkscrew plot twists arrives when the fairy droid stands up. Nobody was expecting that, and yet it makes perfect sense. Because this is the river Styx, not just sewer. He is now the skeletal ferryman. He doesn't steer the ferry with his processor and an uplink. Nope. He's got a pole and long skeletal limbs. He stands there wordlessly escorting the travelers through the underworld on their quest to rescue the ghost of their father. Have I mentioned how much I respect these writers recently? There's another plot twist when Kara, of all people, shoots the droids' heads off. Bad form that. Not supposed to kill a psychopomp, I imagine, but Kara's kind of freaking out by now. And remember how I said I had never connected so much with the droid than when IG-11 landed that dad joke so flat? Well, that moment had nothing on the moment of connection I felt with IG-11 when he gently told Mando that yes, Mando was in fact sad because IG-11 had been analyzing his voice. IG-11, you and every one of us. And then comes the next heartbreaking scene. Okay, it's time to put aside the fangirl and listen to the woman. There was this next scene. I can't say it broke my heart, but it definitely did reach in a spot that was broken long ago. All through the series, Mando has been portrayed as a father, except when he was being fathered by a grandfather and grandmother characters. When IG-11 calmly asks for his permission to die. Look, droids, intelligent beings who are entirely dependent on people, aren't real. But this exact situation, as they showed in the show, can never happen. But there's one very, very similar situation that can and does all too often. This scene touches on it, and it nearly caused me to stop watching so I could go lock myself in the bathroom and have a good cry. There are children who are not born right. All children are entirely dependent on their parents for so much. With all of our science, we don't begin to understand the reality of this biological programming that goes into that bond. But it is strong. I have seen this moment before. When I was a girl, a friend of the family had a very ill child. A child who knew little but suffering from the time he could sit up on his own. His parents, they fought tooth and nail to keep him alive. The father and mother poured themselves into caring for that child. They sought out every possible treatment. But there came a time when they had done all they could, when the child had suffered too much. This becomes a matter separate from all medicine, a matter of the spirit, a point where, be it a child or adult, you can tell that the will is keeping the body alive because they love the ones that they will leave behind. They are staying for those that they will abandon. No doctor or nurse I've ever seen will touch on this subject. This is the moment, your priest, your rabbi, this is the moment you have to go to a holy man to talk about. And I've seen this in real life. The moment the father picks up the child and whispers that they love him so much, but they don't want him to suffer. They want him to stay more than anything, but more than that, they want him to be okay. So if he wants to go home, if he wants to leave them and go to his proper home, he can. This granting permission to die, this speaking the words, that allows someone you love to separate from you with that final separation, granting this permission to leave. I was not expecting that in this episode. Not crammed into a few hectic moments between escaping into the sewers and facing the final battle. Not between a bounty hunter and a killer droid. It could have gone so horribly wrong, this scene. This is touching on something visceral and real that breaks the hearts of the strongest people. But it was so artfully done. I don't know which of these writers has had their heart broken in that way, but I do understand as an author, as a writer, taking your brokenness and pouring it into a scene like this. At this point, I never felt so connected to another creator before. I didn't even realize my heart was in such pain over this. I didn't realize what they had done till the episode was over. There's just so much in this episode. Okay, back to the fun stuff, to the story. And then another surprise, as permission is given and IG-11 steps into the lava. I don't think any of us were expecting a walking through the lava scene. And then that threat he made in Ep 1 is finally fulfilled. But in Episode 1, it was braggadocio and pomp. He would thrust his chest out and loudly announce that he was going to self-destruct every time something went wrong. In Episode 1, he was throwing a temper tantrum. And yet, in this episode, it's quiet. It's done with humility. He does what needs to be done because it needs to be done. And how they crammed that much character development into a coffee maker on top of a rusty bed frame, I will never know. Genius. I cannot say that too much. Alright. A note on the next challenge that awaits our adventurers. It was not until I wrote that sentence that it really, really hit me. Moff Gideon is awfully careless of Baby Yoda's health for something that he cherishes more than they will ever know. Thinking about those stormtroopers lined up to shoot the heck out of whatever came out of that cave. That is not being careful. That is carelessness. That is not cherishing something. And that's when it hit me, sweet dragons of Mandalore. Was Moff Gideon after Baby Yoda at all? We thought he knew that Baby Yoda wasn't in the saloon when he shot it up. But how would he know? He wouldn't have been able to know. The guys on the bikes did not know that Baby Yoda wasn't in there till after that scene. And they didn't seem to be in contact with him anyway, so they wouldn't have told him. So, as far as he knew, he'd shot up the thing with the saloon with Baby Yoda in it. Then IG-11 walks right through his camp. He knew Baby Yoda was in there, protected by nothing but a leather bag. He had brought a weapon that, according to him, vaporized people. He sent in a flamethrower. And then, at the very end, when they're coming out of the River of Death, out onto the flats, he tries to blast them with a low-altitude strafing run. Now, whatever we thought they wanted Baby Yoda for, whatever this thing is that he cherished, that he wanted, that tells me it couldn't have been organic. Basically, it couldn't have been Baby Yoda, unless Baby Yoda is some kind of inorganic droid himself, which would be a pretty interesting plot twist, but that's not what's suggested at all. Baby Yoda needs to eat. Baby Yoda needs to drink. Baby Yoda is organic. He is something that can be vaporized, something that can be burned. Whatever Moff Gideon cherishes, it's not Baby Yoda. So what could he possibly be after? Even Baby Yoda's midichlorians, I assume they would be destroyed by his body being vaporized. Has he been after the child or the father? Given the giant plot twist at the end, I'm a professional. At the end of the giant plot twist at the end of the episode, I think his focus is on Mandalore, not Baby Yoda or even Baby Yoda's species. This isn't about the Force-sensitive baby at all. Let's see, what do we know? The client reported to Moff Gideon. The client wanted the child, but the client was just a low-level functionary. He wouldn't have been told everything. But they paid in Beskar, on a planet where the Bounty Hunters Guild had one of the last known Mandalorians. Why did they come to Navarro? Why did the Empire come to Navarro? Why did they come to that bounty hunters guild when there were apparently a bunch of freelance bounty hunters running around who didn't ask questions? And the client knew a lot about Mandalore. There was a whole scene about that where he sat down and picked at the Mando about it. So we all thought that the client paid an Imperial stamped Beskar because it was the most valuable thing they had, because the client was strapped for cash. And that made sense until Moff Gideon showed up with a shiny custom job TIE fighter. Making a specialized fighter like that is expensive. We're talking billions, if not trillions of dollars expensive to design and build a whole new fighter. And he had all those shiny, well-maintained Death Troopers who are trained well enough to give Mando a run for his money. Now, here's the question. Did they pay in Beskar because it was still a way to preserve their resources? They have to be operating under some conditions of scarcity, no matter how rich they are. Or did they pay an Imperial stamped Beskar because the goal was always to lure out a Mandalorian? Maybe a specific Mandalorian, or maybe just any Mandalorian. Has Baby Yoda been a red herring this whole time? Remember, when this show started, we did not expect a Baby Yoda. We did not expect this beautiful relationship. We did not expect the lone wolf and cub thing. We expected the show to be about a Mandalorian. This whole show has been about showing character, the truth of people's motivations through actions rather than words. You know who the Mando is because of his actions. Nothing he says, nothing you can see on his face. Moff Gideon said that they had something that he cherished, but his actions say that he doesn't cherish Baby Yoda one bit. Not for Baby Yoda himself, not for his Force abilities, not for what Baby Yoda's body could have provided in the form of midichlorians. What is it that he cherished? It wasn't below in the covert, or he would have just sent his imps down there to get it. So think, what was that thing Mando had around his neck this whole time? It got a lot of screen time for something that was just supposed to be the key path to get Baby Yoda the protection of the Mandalorian covert. What if, hear me out, we're going pure theory right now, what if the driving MacGuffin of a show, the show that is called The Mandalorian, is actually something Mandalorian? We were all shocked when Baby Yoda took over the show, but we soon lost that feeling of shock because, well, have you seen him? Anyway, but what if this whole relationship between Baby Yoda and the Mando, the question about what's so special about Baby Yoda, why is his force power so high? What if all of his force powers, all of that, was just a sleight of hand to keep the audience from noticing that the show is actually about Mandalore, Mandalorians? Anyway, speaking of Mandalorians and their customs, oh my goodness, when the armor said, "You are a clan of two," oh, that warmed my already broken heart. I needed that. And then the last battle scene with the armorer, usually in a scene where one person takes out a bunch of people, I don't like it. I've had enough martial arts experience to know when those scenes are BS, and that was a beautifully done one person against many opponents scenes. She let them make the first mistake. They surrounded her. That means every single one of those stormtroopers had at least 3 of his fellow stormtroopers in a direct line of fire. They couldn't shoot directly at her. And they crowded around her to get in the best range for their weapons. Because, stormtroopers aren't good shots. And she had her range extended by a sledgehammer, baby, and she swung that like the blacksmith she is. I have seen and met female blacksmiths, and they are strong. I've seen them wield steel like that. That was an excellent scene. That is probably, hands down, the best single opponent against multiple opponent scene I have seen in a long time. Or probably the best one that I've seen ever. That was Jackie Chan levels of martial arts realism right there. I loved it. Anyway, I won't give away the final plot twist. You have to see it to believe it. And it is so beautifully, beautifully revealed. The Jawas are everywhere in this show, and they're kind of mutzing around, and suddenly it's, oh, look at that! He's welding his way out from the inside of the... What? That's a very strange color for a welding torch, is that? Oh, yes. Yes, it is. This episode, I laughed, I sobbed, I squealed like the little fangirl I am deep inside. This show is high art. I have never seen a TV show with this level of actual theatrical arts in it before. The visuals, the themes, the symbolisms, the technical formatting details that would do the best theater on Broadway proud. So, what do you think? Do you agree? Am I just a crazy fangirl reading far too much into the shining moments of this show? Leave a like or a comment below if you agree or disagree. Now mount up your ancestral dragon. It's time to go rescue the ghost of your father from the underworld. Have a peace out, my wonderful viewers.